Welcome back to Daily Harmony, a journey through A Course in Miracles.
Mm,
Today we're exploring Lesson 101.
right.
God's will for me is perfect happiness.
Yeah. It's interesting how this lesson follows yesterday's focus on choosing, between the ego's thought system and the Holy Spirit's guidance.
Right.
Lesson 101 kind of takes that choice a step further, suggesting that aligning with God's will actually leads us to a state of perfect happiness.
That's a bold statement.
It
It
is.
seems to imply that this perfect happiness isn't dependent on
Yeah.
external circumstances or achievements like we usually think.
Exactly. The lesson really emphasizes this by contrasting the ego's pursuit of happiness through those external means with the idea that true and lasting happiness is actually like an inherent part of who we are, part of our divine nature.
So it's not about chasing like fleeting moments of pleasure,
Hmm.
but tapping into a deeper wellspring of joy that's already within us.
Precisely. And the lesson uses this really powerful metaphor
Okay.
of misplaced keys to illustrate this.
We frantically search for happiness outside of ourselves
Right.
when all along it's been right here within like keys tucked away in our pocket.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It really highlights how we often complicate things,
You do.
looking for happiness in all the wrong places.
Yeah, and the lesson reminds us that this inherent happiness, this inner peace, it's not something we have to earn
Right.
or achieve. It's our birthright, our natural state as creations of God.
That's a really empowering concept, but it
Yeah,
also
right.
raises some questions for me.
Sure.
If this perfect happiness is already within us, why don't we experience it all the time?
Yeah.
What's blocking us from accessing this birthright?
Well, that's where the concept of the ego comes in.
Okay.
Remember, Course in Miracles teaches that the ego is this false self based on fear and separation.
Right.
It thrives on external validation, constantly seeking happiness through possessions, achievements, and the approval of others.
And this constant striving actually keeps us disconnected from the true joy that resides within.
So in a sense, our own ego, our attachment to this illusion of separation from God, is what's preventing us from experiencing the perfect happiness that's our birthright.
Exactly. And Lesson 101 offers these practical tools
Okay.
to help us shift our perception and align with God's will, which is ultimately the will to love and be happy.
The lesson suggests using specific affirmations,
Yeah.
like God's will for me is perfect happiness, and practicing techniques such as meditation and gratitude journaling. It's interesting how these seemingly simple practices can have such a profound impact on our experience of happiness.
What's so fascinating here is that these practices work by helping us dismantle the ego's thought system.
Okay.
The daily affirmation, for instance, is like a constant reminder that our true identity is not defined by those external circumstances,
Right.
but by our connection to God, to this source of perfect happiness.
So by repeating this affirmation, we're essentially reprogramming our minds to recognize the truth of who we are and tap into this wellspring of inner joy.
Yeah.
And what about meditation? How does that fit into this process?
Well, meditation in the context of ACIM is not just about relaxation or stress reduction.
Okay.
It's about quieting the mind, stilling the ego's chatter,
Right.
so we can experience this non-dualistic state that the Course emphasizes. It's about recognizing that our separation from God, from this perfect happiness, is an illusion.
So through meditation, we can start to experience, even if just for fleeting moments, that union with God, with this source of perfect love and happiness that the lesson is pointing us toward.
Precisely. And gratitude journaling plays a crucial role as well.
Okay.
It's not just about feeling grateful for the good things in our lives,
Right.
but about recognizing the abundance of God's love already present in each moment. It's about shifting from a mindset of lack and scarcity to one of abundance and gratitude, recognizing that we already have everything we need for perfect happiness.
That's a beautiful way to think about it.
Yeah.
It's like gratitude journaling helps us to see the world through the lens of God's love, recognizing the joy and perfection that's already present, even in the midst of challenges.
And this ties back to the core message of Lesson 101.
Okay.
By aligning our will with God's will, by choosing love over fear, we tap into this inherent happiness that's always been within us, just waiting to be recognized and embraced.
It's so interesting how the lesson uses these practical tools to help us bridge the gap between the intellectual understanding of these concepts and the actual experience of perfect happiness in our daily lives.
And that's a crucial point. ACIM is not just a philosophy to study.
Right.
It's a path to walk, a way of life. It's about putting these teachings into practice and seeing how they transform our experience of the world, our relationships, and ultimately ourselves. And that's the beauty of this lesson. You know, it gives us tangible steps to move from theory to practice. It's not just about understanding that perfect happiness exists within. It's about actively choosing it, moment by moment.
I'm curious about something you mentioned, aligning our will with God's will. For some listeners, the concept of God might be a stumbling block.
Sure.
Can you elaborate on what that means in the context of ACIM?
Yeah.
Especially for those who might not subscribe to a specific religion.
That's an excellent question. In ACIM, God can be understood as a metaphor for our true nature, our higher self, or the source of love and creation.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that divine spark within each of us and aligning with that.
So it's about connecting with that inherent goodness, that source of love and peace,
Right.
regardless of what name or label we choose to give it.
Exactly. And aligning our will with this higher power just means choosing love over fear.
Okay.
In our thoughts, words, and actions.
Right.
It's about recognizing our interconnectedness with all beings and extending compassion and forgiveness to ourselves and others.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about tapping into that universal love that transcends religious boundaries.
Yeah.
And seeing ourselves as part of that greater whole.
And when we do that, when we shift our focus from the ego's limited perspective to this broader, more loving awareness,
Right.
we naturally start to experience more joy, peace, and yes, perfect happiness.
I'm starting to see how these ideas connect. It's like by dismantling the ego's thought system of fear and separation,
Yeah.
we open ourselves up to experiencing the love and joy that are our true inheritance.
It's a process of remembering who we truly are, shedding the layers of false beliefs that keep us stuck in suffering and limitation.
You mentioned that ACIM is a path to walk a way of life. Can you share an example of how someone might apply this lesson in a practical everyday situation?
Certainly.
Let's say dealing with a difficult coworker or a stressful family dynamic.
Okay, let's say you're dealing with a difficult coworker.
Okay.
The ego's reaction might be to get angry, defensive, or judgmental. But Lesson 101 invites us to pause and choose a different response.
Instead of reacting from that place of ego, we could choose to approach the situation with understanding, compassion, or even forgiveness.
Precisely. And in that moment of choosing love over fear, you're aligning with God's will. Even if it doesn't feel like it at the time.
Right.
You're shifting from seeing your coworker as a source of stress to recognizing their shared humanity, their own struggles and pain.
And that shift in perception, that act of choosing love, allows us to experience a sense of inner peace, even in challenging circumstances.
And that's the key. Perfect happiness doesn't mean we'll never experience those difficult emotions or challenging situations.
Right.
It's about having that foundation of inner peace that allows us to navigate those experiences with more grace, resilience, and even joy.
This reminds me of the lesson's emphasis on forgiveness.
Yeah.
How does forgiveness play into experiencing this perfect happiness?
Forgiveness is essential in ACIM because it helps us release the grievances and judgments that keep us trapped in the ego's thought system.
It's about letting go of the past, hurts and resentments that block us from experiencing the love and joy that are already within us.
Exactly. And forgiveness doesn't mean condoning harmful actions or forgetting what happened.
Okay.
It's about choosing to see ourselves and others through the eyes of love, recognizing that we are all doing the best we can with the understanding we have.
It's about recognizing that we are all on this journey together,
Yeah.
learning and growing and making mistakes along the way.
And in that recognition, in that act of forgiveness, we tap into a wellspring of compassion and understanding that extends not only to others, but also to ourselves.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like by forgiving ourselves and others, we're essentially clearing the way for love and joy to flow more freely in our lives.
And that connection to love and joy is the essence of perfect happiness.
This conversation is really helping me to see Lesson 101 in a new light. It's not just a feel-good message. It's a profound invitation to shift our entire perception and experience of life.
And the beautiful thing is this invitation is always open to us, no matter how many times we stumble or fall back into old patterns. We can always choose again. We can always choose love. We can always choose forgiveness. And we can always choose perfect happiness.
That's a truly empowering message.
It is.
It reminds us that we have the power to create our own experience of happiness. Not by changing external circumstances, but by transforming our inner world. It feels like we're being reminded that we're not just victims of our circumstances, but powerful creators of our own reality.
And that's a radical idea, in a world that often tells us that happiness is something to be pursued and acquired.
Right.
ACIM flips that script, suggesting it's already within us, just waiting to be uncovered.
So it's not about adding more things to our lives, but peeling back the layers of ego, fear, and illusion that keep us separate from that inherent joy.
Exactly. And the lesson provides these practical tools like affirmations and meditation, not as a checklist, but as ways to gently shift our perception and experience.
For someone who's new to this, it can still feel daunting.
Sure.
They might be thinking, okay, perfect happiness sounds great, but how do I actually start experiencing it?
That's where the lesson's reflection question becomes so powerful.
Okay.
It asks, in what ways do I seek happiness outside of myself? Simply noticing that tendency is the first step.
So becoming aware of those moments when we're reaching for external validation or placing our happiness on achieving some future goal, that's the starting point.
And then the second part of the question guides us deeper. How can I shift my focus to recognize that it is already within me as part of God's will?
That shift in focus is key, isn't it?
It is.
It's about recognizing those glimpses of inner peace we already experience and connecting them to that deeper truth the lesson is pointing to.
Precisely. Maybe it's a moment of quiet contemplation in nature, or the simple joy of connecting with a loved one.
Yeah.
Recognizing those as expressions of God's will, of our own inherent perfection, starts to change everything.
It's like we're training ourselves to see the world through a different lens, one that filters out the ego's distortions and allows the light of perfect happiness to shine through.
Beautifully put. And remember, this isn't about denying the challenges of life or pretending everything is always rosy.
Right.
ACIM acknowledges suffering exists, but it offers a different way of relating to it.
So instead of getting lost in the story of our suffering, we can access that underlying peace, that awareness that our true self is untouched by those external circumstances.
And that's where those practices come in again. That daily affirmation becomes a lifeline, reminding us of our true identity even amidst turmoil.
Right.
Meditation provides a space to reconnect with that inner stillness. And gratitude journaling helps us find those glimmers of God's love even in the darkest moments.
It's like we're building a toolkit for navigating life's ups and downs, equipped with the understanding that perfect happiness is always available to us, regardless of what's happening on the surface.
And the more we engage with these practices, the more that awareness becomes ingrained.
Right.
It's not about achieving some permanent state of bliss, but rather cultivating a deep inner knowing that our true nature is perfect love and joy.
This deep dive has been so insightful.
Good.
It's given me a whole new understanding of what it means to align with God's will and how that alignment leads to experiencing perfect happiness.
And remember, this is just one lesson in a vast and transformative course.
Right.
Each lesson builds upon the last, gradually unveiling the truth of who we are and the boundless love that awaits within.
So for our listeners who are ready to embark on this journey of experiencing perfect happiness, what's one key takeaway they can hold on to?
I'd say remember that perfect happiness is not a destination.
Okay.
It's a choice we can make in each moment by shifting our focus from the ego's demands.
Right. To the quiet whisper of our true selves, where God's will for us is perfect happiness.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into A Course in Miracles. We hope it's inspired you to explore these concepts further and discover the perfect happiness that awaits within.
And remember, the journey is just as important as the destination. Embrace the process, be gentle with yourself, and allow the love and joy that are your birthright to guide you every step of the way.
Please like, share, and subscribe to Daily Harmony for more deep dives into A Course in Miracles. See you tomorrow.